Welcome to the first ever live interview on the Condo web show, the place where we bring industry experts to answer your questions. On today's episode, I will be interviewing Gord Sheppard, the author of the How to Create Awesome Meetings book, where he will share how to eliminate poor time management, arguments during board meetings, how to become a better meeting facilitator, how to create an effective agenda, and more. Meaning, shorter, more effective board meetings where things get done. You see, Gord is on a mission to create awesome meetings for you and your organization. During his 25 years of experience, Gord has facilitated, run, and participated in more than 2,000 meetings. He's a professional speaker, meeting facilitator, consultant, and a trainer who combines a master's degree in business administration with a bachelor's degree in drama to deliver a unique, people-centered approach that will help you make your next meeting more productive. And the best news of it all, he decided to share all this information with you. So make sure you stay until the end of the interview, because at the end we will be doing a draw where you will be able to win a free copy of his book. So pay attention.
Can you imagine what happens for your organization? Doesn't matter if you're in a small business, a large organization, and then ultimately you'll serve your customers at a higher level. And I can honestly say this, I'll look right in the camera and say this. I am literally changing the world one meeting at a time.
You know what, Gord, I'm super excited, as fun as it sounds, because I attend a lot of meetings. I'm part of different associations in the industry. I have my own business, as I mentioned, and great meetings are good to go to. Like crappy meetings, I just dread attending them because nothing gets done.
You and everybody else. I mean, and there's a lot of people now, because I speak all over Alberta on this topic to different groups and different things. You mentioned association meetings, though, they could tune up a little bit. Settings, the small business guys. So much of what we do in meetings is not intentional. We're allowing the loudmouth to talk too much. We're a business owner and we're not looking at the opportunity cost. We think we need to be there for whatever reason, and suddenly we're losing time. Well, if you're losing time, you're losing money in a business owner's case. If you're a nonprofit setting, you're going to be not serving the end user at the best way. The meeting is really where it all comes together. The leadership is in there. The strategy should be involved and all the good technical things. So again, you got me here. Let's let her rip.
Yeah, you know what? And you write certain questions that I have for you.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of questions to ask you. So
let's go.
Let's go. I have one question. How long have you been doing this for?
So I've been doing this now in a concentrated way for about 5 years. So facilitating meetings and allowing the consulting part to then reinforce what's going on. I wrote the book in 2015, and so that was sort of a great thing to get my thoughts down and have these 10 steps. And what's crazy now is the steps work. Like I just know it. I apply it when I go into teaching situations. The workshops that I'm delivering, when people get the 10 steps, and I'm glad you brought a pen and a paper. Write tons of notes. I could be talking to 150 people, 50 people, 4 people, doesn't matter. They're really getting a lot out of this, and I'm going to be really revealing those 10 steps for everybody here today.
Yeah, and those steps are covered in your book,
yep,
which is a great read. It's not a very long read. You know, it's straight to the point with some great ideas, some great points and examples. And I think anybody that's attending or running a meeting should read this. So you've been doing this for 5 years, over 2,000 meetings. Tell me the most challenging meeting you have ever facilitated.
Oh, you know, it's so funny because I think we could all pick from a handful of those ones. And when I think about challenges in meetings, it often comes when people aren't self-aware. So they've come together in a meeting situation, and I can think of one where, I'll pick one where cell phones were an issue. And I'll start the meeting, I'll say, kind of what are the ground rules for the meeting that we're having right now? And I'll just say immediately, what are we going to do with cell phones? Because it's not even actually about cell phones. It's actually about getting a feel for the room about who's going to do what. Well, a lot of people just sort of put them away. Well, there's a couple people in this one meeting that wanted to argue about not having cell phones. And it was a 5-hour meeting. And I'm being brought in and I'm getting paid to do the meeting. I'm like, you're going to pay a guy to come in here and you have to have this thing where you're not going to be together in the situation? So I think that was one of the toughest ones that I had to kind of navigate gently. And in fact, I gave permission. I was so surprised because, again, I think meetings, if you're getting together, I didn't get together to watch you read your texts, right? And we get into this jam a lot these days. But again, Sometimes there's lots of reasons why people are reading their text and why they're not engaged. We're going to jump into that here today. Yeah.
And you know what? I'm happy that you brought up cell phone use at meetings, because whenever I go to a meeting and I find people on a cell phone, it shows me that they're not respectful to anybody at the table and to themselves, right? Because they're wasting their own time. So, you respect others, but you also have to respect
Well,
yours.
and here's the thought in their head. They don't want to be there either. So now, why is it such a big deal to say, hey, you don't really want to be here? Why don't you leave? I'll say shocking things like that all the way along here, because it seems culturally like we're tied into like, well, I'm going to put up with that guy on his cell phone. Let him go. And what I find now in situations, I'll give you an example. I was in a nonprofit board setting where I was facilitating a strategy session, and the chair came in about 15 minutes late, started talking about his dog, and the good consultant facilitator is supposed to sit back and go, are we finished with that story now and we're done? Something happened to me. I started standing up. I looked this guy right in the eye and I said, you're late. You're talking about something that these other 10 people could care less about. What do you want to do about it? Now I thought, I'll pack my bags and go, because I'm just going to get kicked out. Here's why I tell the story. The guy, and I always look around the table at people I've been dealing with, the guy over who did the financials gushed and he went, oh, thank goodness somebody said something. And I say that because this is what people are thinking. So why are we putting up with cell phones, lateness, all these things? And it's almost evangelical. I really want to get the word out to say, again, I was telling you, the end user's waiting for those meetings to be better. So it's all connected.
That's a great point. At condo boards, a lot of people join the board because they have a personal agenda. They're not respectful to others. They won't let others speak. They feel that they're the most important person at the table. How can a condo board deal with that?
Yeah, and so we're going to jump into this. So I don't mind jumping around because we're going to kind of work through the 10 steps here. But the basic thing is to make a meeting successful, to set the team up for success, you got to have the right people in the room. Just showing up and being a warm body who's breathing, I'm not sure if that means you're the right person for the job. Condo boards deal with serious issues that are related to tens of thousands of dollars of expenditures or savings. You're protecting your investment. There's a lot of good reasons to be there, but these little fiefdoms tend to come up. So the first thing I'm going to say there is who's in the room. So being aware of who's in the room. Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? Those are pretty simple, right? Are you the guy who's going to block? Are you the guy who's going to support? Knowing who's on the team and then saying, do we have the right people in the room? Just because you showed up and got elected to the board doesn't mean you should be in there. And one of my favorite examples I bring up around this, and I said it when I was speaking at the Condominium conference, was if you have an issue like insurance rates, and you've got people in there that it's going to take an hour to explain what insurance means, should those people be in the meeting? And I said this out loud to a crowd of about 80 people. And the people, half the room was like, no, don't let that happen anymore. Because you've been in that meeting where you're explaining something to somebody and they really don't need the information. So what are their unique strengths? Right? What are those people doing? Are they a good researcher? Are they a good numbers guy? Are they a guy that's going to bring you back information about electrical rates, fixed and variable, that will benefit your condo board goals? So do we have the right people on the team? If we're talking hockey, maybe we're talking football or soccer or whatever you want to call it. We're not going to have 12 goalies on the field, right? Same thing in your meetings, and then acknowledging and having the respectful ability to say, I don't think you need to be in this meeting. Now, we're so worried about offending each other, and that's really at the heart of the whole matter, that we don't want to say anything. But the sooner you can get those people off and you can get sort of a good, whatever your quorum is, 5 people, 7 people, whatever that is, get that group functioning really well. Invest the time of picking up tips today that we'll learn to get those guys going. But so who's there, knowing their personality traits, getting their unique ability to go forward, and then feeding that to them. But that thing of explain everything to everybody, and everybody tells their personal stories. Well, how often do condo boards meet? You've had experience in this. How often do they come together?
Oh, we try to meet about 6 weeks, every 6 weeks.
So about 10 times a year, maybe?
Maybe
9, 10.
Yeah.
So just think about it. You're running a $2 million situation, and you meet 8, 9, 10 times a year, and you're going to make $2 million work?
Oh,
Please, this is a business question. It's not someone showed up as a warm body, and I mean to just bring it to that level. And then it gives relief, I think, I know when I'm in the room and I actually respectfully say, well, you don't need to be part of this. Some people are offended, and I work through that as a facilitator, but really it gives relief to the situation, because then the people that know what they're doing can go off. And I never say kick them out. It's not to be mean. It's to say, what's that person good at? Maybe they're just really good at the social part of what this meeting comes together for. And so you get them off, and I call it shiny objects. Give them something that they really get excited about, keep them engaged, but in the core activity, you need the right people on the team.
Right. You know, everything starts with the right team in place, right?
And it's funny because we get caught in this, I don't know if it's being good Canadians or what's wrong with saying that, except we get stuck with it. And then suddenly you've got guys that think about the condo board. You got business guys in there. You got retired people that ran banks, all kinds of, there's people that never had any business experience and they came from all these different walks of life. Well, you want to make sure you're getting the best people making the best decisions, especially when you're commanding hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. Yeah.
You know, it's funny, you keep on bringing the cost of a meeting into this conversation.
Sure.
And I know why, because at the board level, at the condo board level, we have a lot of people that are not business owners. So they don't think of the amount of time that they spend at the meeting, and they don't put a cost or a price on it.
Right.
Right?
Well, look around the room. So on a condo board meeting, what's typical? 10 people, 12 people?
Depending on the size of the condo, but you're looking at between 3 to 8, 9 people.
So you got 8, 9 people. Let's call it 10 just for round numbers. So what do you make an hour? $200, $500, $1,000? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Just pick a number, and then go around the room really fast. This is a quick formula, and we just add up and we say, the actual wages for this meeting, and you say, well, we're not getting paid, Gord, we're volunteering. Wait a second. Just make it wages for a second. Let's say it's $50 an hour. Suddenly you got $500. Well, you got to put the lights on. Right? You got to pay for the space to meet for an hour, 3 hours, whatever you're meeting for. Suddenly you've got a real cost. And I'm going to say, I always say this, I think any meeting that you're going into costs $1,000 an hour. And if you add that up, then you're going to meet 10 times, you get $10,000. And you're looking over what, $1 million or $2 million? No. Put all that together business-wise. And it's funny, we hold up the business guys, and this is for them because they love the cost stuff. There's good things that other people can bring in, because maybe they're bringing in soft skills, right? So the business guy oversees the numbers part. That's great. But maybe the soft skill person, the retired teacher, somebody who's able to come in and say, we've got some soft issues around people interacting, people not fighting, and they'll have good perspective too. So it takes a team, right, to raise that whole thing.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes the team is so disorganized, unprepared, and at times they don't really know how to run a meeting, right? They have those issues. They've never run a business. They've never attended. They've never been a part of an association or a board of any kind. Yeah. And they do need help. So what can they do? Here's
the first thing I'm going to say about, this is step 4 in my book, and it's one of these sort of really critical steps. I'll say right away, fire a bad facilitator. Gord, we can't. He's the chair. That's not possible. Listen, here's what I mean when I say that. You want to get them the skills so they know how to run a meeting. So when I say fire them, it's not necessarily that you need to kick them out right away. But just because they're the chairman, just because you're the CEO, the owner, the whatever, you've got this chair role, it doesn't mean that because you have a title that you know how to run a meeting. This is a critical lesson. So don't get caught in that trap. The second practical thing that I'll say is rotate the chair. So you've got a bad meeting leader, but someone comes in and goes, hey, I heard about this thing where we can actually take turns running the meeting. This gives the guy running the meeting who's maybe not good at it, guy, gal, whatever, and they're going to get a chance to then have somebody else do it, and they can watch and learn from someone who's maybe a little bit better at that. Or maybe you just say, because we want to just share that role. And I'm trying to give you techniques that give a bit of relief by not getting stuck with that one guy who's the chairman, chairperson, whatever you want to call it, and they're the one that's always doing it. And just trying to feed them information or get them ways to get out of that. The next thing that they need to do to become good facilitators is get some skills in if they don't have them. And that always actually starts back on step 1 of my book, which is I think that great meetings start with you. Right? So if you can take responsibility for yourself in a meeting, it doesn't matter if you're the leader or the follower. You want to make sure that you have some self-awareness, and you're going to go in there, and if you're going to be a participant, be the best participant that you can be. If you're going to be the leader, take the time to learn how to run a meeting. There's a great story that inspires me about having a choice in a meeting. Because I think you can choose, literally, how you act during a meeting. You can look at your cell phone, or you can be engaged. You can sit here with your arms crossed, or you can actually get into what you're doing. You can stay mad for 20 minutes, or you can actually not. And there's a story of a guy named Viktor Frankl. Have you heard this story before?
I don't believe so, no.
Viktor Frankl was taken prisoner of war in the Nazi concentration camps. He was a psychologist. And when he went in there, here's what happened. They had a 1 in 28 chance of making it out. There's that many more people that were murdered. So around him, people are being murdered, starved, tortured. He's being beaten. He made an interesting discovery. He found out that in between stimulus and response, in between what was happening to him, beaten, all this sort of awful things, and his response, there's a gap. And in that gap is the power to choose your reaction. And if you can choose your reaction, you can choose your freedom. Now, the book that he wrote this in is a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And I think this is one of those bucket list books that hopefully the audience can put on their bucket list. It's a short read. And I think this is a very powerful concept because it gets back to that thing of if you can choose how you act during a meeting, no matter who you are in that meeting, there's a good chance that your condo board meeting is going to run better. Another great way to choose how to act is to use the word point. To make a great point. And here, I'll explain it to you because I explain this a lot in kind of the workshop. So let's start with the letter P in the word point. That's preparation. Now, of course, when you're getting ready for a condo meeting, you're getting what? You're getting research in, you're talking probably to some experts and that kind of stuff. Talk to your colleagues, we want to know what the issues are because we're getting ready for the meeting. The thing I think it gets lost in preparing is what I'll call blue sky time. So I was spending some time with the chief financial officer of a multi-billion-dollar company. And I can't sort of stretch out here because we're on camera, but here's the thing. He was sitting in his office one day, he had his feet up, and he's looking out the window. Another executive comes in, looks at him and says, "What the heck are you doing?" He says this, "I'm thinking." And I explain it that way because what happens is when we have something important to say, what's an important issue that you would bring into a condo board meeting? Something about what? Give me an example.
Oh, fees going up, water leaks, damage to common property.
These are massively important. They have huge implications. You're going to end up paying more money. Your property value is going to be impacted. You want to be ready. So you actually just don't need to get one piece of information. That might be a very important point where you need to think about all the different things that you need to do around that. That's the P in point. The O in point is to optimize what you're saying. So you can imagine, if I had a whiteboard here, guys, I'd be just sort of going, P-O-I-N-T up on the board. So now we're on the O. You want to optimize what you're saying. What does that mean? Well, it was before I came here, I was in the mirror, driving myself crazy, practicing all my stuff, trying to sound slick. This, you're getting ready. You want to get down to your elevator pitch, right? It's like when I rode the elevator up here. If I had 30 seconds with you on the elevator, that's what I want to say. Well, imagine if everyone in the meeting did it that quickly.
Oh, wouldn't that be awesome?
Wouldn't that be awesome, right? So now we're optimizing, and then I deliver. So I'm in the meeting, and I say my thing. The I in point, remember we're over here to our 5 letters, the I in point is to invite feedback. Now when I say invite feedback, we have 2 ears and we have 1 mouth, not a bad ratio for speaking and listening, right? If we can remind each other about that. In my case, my mom used to do this because I talk so much and I'm a bit vocal. She'd go like this. And that meant zip it and throw away the keys. So so I'm the guy who needs to put my hand. So I say my thing in the meeting, I put my, just like this and I listen. And when you invite feedback, the temptation physiologically is to jump somebody. Hey, the fees are going up, and I explain this thing, and someone's like, "Oh, wait a minute," and you're like, "No, what?" Practicing not saying anything just for a few minutes to allow other people to have input, if that's why you're meeting, is really, really important, and it's a practice skill. The N in point, as we go down the whiteboard here, is to name the hurdles and solutions. So what's going to stop us from getting this done? How can we get it done? And finally, the T in point is to take action. Who's going to do it? When are they going to do it? And who's going to do it? When is going to do it? And what has to be done? And hopefully those 3 things, the who, what, and when, goes on the agenda, right? Because we want to meet the next time, and we want to say, "Hey, Rafael, you said the last meeting you're going to do this thing, and you either got it done or you didn't, but it's on the agenda now, and we have a record of how that goes forward, and that really helps for the follow-up." So take responsibility for yourself, be aware of yourself, choose how you're going to act during a meeting, and then great point, imagine how powerful it would be if everybody did it. You could get to the wine faster, right? If everyone made a great point.
Yeah. You know what? I wish everybody followed that formula, stuck to it. Because meetings wouldn't be 3 hours long, that some board meetings are. Like our board meetings right now are about 15 to 40 minutes long, right?
Right.
We get straight to the point. We know exactly what we need, but it took us a while to get there.
How did you get there?
Practice. Actually having a discussion, doing things in between meetings, not just leaving everything, every decision, every discussion to the meeting. And we slowly started creating little strategies, which is the next
So I love,
thing that
so I
want to
love
get
where
into.
this is going. Can you hear, instead of reading a textbook and studying for 3 years to have a good meeting, you said, we just started to get it done. So that group of people at that time, we did one little thing and we got it. I love this approach because everything that I do is all practical. Yeah. Like the word POINT as an acronym, you guys could teach, you could teach any group of people that literally in 3 minutes. And then it's just a matter of practicing it, and you can hear the good meetings that you guys have gotten to, right? Especially if you, like, imagine getting 2 hours back in your life, right? Instead of wasting, I love it. That's great.
I remember when I started on the board back in 2007, our meetings were a little bit excruciating. 3 hours, 4 hours, and it took us a while, right? So we had to get the right people on the board, we had to have the right agenda, we had to have the right discussions, and we actually had to have, as I said, a strategy.
But now, do you guys understand how valuable that effort was?
Oh, it's priceless.
Priceless, right? So this is the inspiration that I hope, and I hear this in different sectors. So I hear it's so good that this condo board's doing it. I see it done at association levels. I see it done in corporate settings. This is what it is. It's incremental. It's watching this show here today and do one thing when I go back to my next meeting. And then we're going to add that on and add that on. And that's the only way to do it, I think.
You know what you're told, right? It's like little baby steps.
That's it.
If you do too much at once, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to say, it's not working for us. This is useless. And you're going to move away from it. Little baby steps. You can't implement everything in one sitting, right? It'll take time.
Yeah.
It'll take time. It'll take training. It'll take, people have to adapt. People have to listen, right? They have to be open to new ideas. And slowly things will start improving.
Yeah.
But in step 5 of your book, you're talking about linking a meeting to a strategy. A lot of times boards meet for the sake of meeting because we have to meet, because we have to discuss things, right? And those meetings tend to go longer than they need to, right? So tell us, if you could share with us, how can we link a meeting to a good strategy?
Great. Thanks for bringing that up. This is the step I'm really if I think I have a unique contribution in this, and I train facilitators and I help people with agendas and I follow up and all those things. This is the piece that I get really, really excited about it. But listen to what you just said. Hey guys, let's get together because we have to get together. How does that work, right? And yet, of course, we know that in these, these requirements of the board that might be the case. What I think I'm hearing in the condo board setting is that people think they're getting ready, they're getting together to what? Save money. And what? Keep their property values? Is that sort of it?
Keep their property values up,
Yep.
Reduce complaints, hopefully keep their owners informed, actually get things done.
So it sounds very detail-y. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if I sit here and I say, I want to change the world one meeting at a time, that's a vision.
That is a vision.
So this might be awkward, but maybe your condo board actually can create a vision statement. Now that might be going too far. Oh, Gord, that's too much, Gord. We don't go that far and whatever. And I don't mean spend hours and hours or hire consultants. I mean, what is the reason that you're all getting together? And I'm hoping that keep my property value higher so that I can pass it along to my grandkids, or make sure that my costs are lower because I really need to. I hope that those are really what you might call almost a vision. Yeah. And then those are key strategic objectives. And if we sat down from wherever you worked, it doesn't matter where the people on these condo boards worked, these visions, these strategies are there. What I think the opportunity that we have in meetings is to bring those strategies to life. So let's just say the vision was, in this case, just someone made up their condo board strategy. The vision is to keep my property value as high as it can so that my grandchildren will get as much as possible. That's a great vision. It may not be the same for everybody, but let's just say that was the vision. Then, if you, at the beginning of your meeting, instead of starting week's meetings minutes, or whatever, last meeting minutes, what if you started with saying the vision statement out loud? That focuses the tone of the meeting. Or maybe you start with one of your strategic objectives. You say, wait a minute, our strategic objective, remember at the beginning of the year we got together and we had our strategy. The objective is to save as much money as possible so we can keep as much money in our pockets as possible. So let's say that at the beginning of the meeting. Let's get to the end of the meeting, and at the end of the meeting, the facilitator can say, did we serve that key strategic objective? Now, if you didn't, you'll know it right away. About the gluten-free hot dog issue for the summer barbecue that we're planning, and I say that comedically because I've been in that meeting and it was a sad thing. I'm talking about meetings I didn't want to be in. But if you get to the end of the meeting and you did serve that objective, it means you're on track. And so if you're on track with your strategy, then you know exactly why you're meeting. And if you know why you're meeting, the meeting's going to run well. So I think these strategies are really important if you can articulate them. They don't need to be overly complex if you don't have one sort of off the cuff. But certainly those two key objectives are there. And then, like a woman I met up in Morinville who states the vision statement at the beginning of the meeting and then at the end asks that question, if in every meeting that you're in you know you're serving your strategy, then that meeting can't be off track. It just can't. So I think that's a powerful, powerful concept that's easy to practice and easy to do.
You know what? It's funny how you mentioned that, because we at our board level, we don't have a vision or a strategy on paper. However, we do want to keep our property value high. We have a lot of developments going in the surrounding areas. We want to stay competitive, and that's our goal. Right now, we're planning on renovating our lobby and then every floor coming in the next couple of years, because we have to do that. So in a way, that is our vision and a strategy. So our viewers, I would like to task you with this. Once you go back to your board meeting, have a quick little chat. And what is your strategy or your vision for your next year? Because I think that little vision or a strategy or a goal will help you get your meetings a little bit more effective. And tying into that, you're talking about blockbuster agendas.
Well, I'm excited about the agenda thing, and I can't wait to talk about it. I just want to tie in one other thing to what you just said, which was, I like maintenance as a line item, because you got to talk about that. And so, do you invest in maintenance or do you not? Right? It comes up. So, should we repair the foundation, or should we wait a couple of years? If you don't have a strategy to back that up, then every decision that you're making in a meeting is reactive. And down the line, we can pull out all kinds of examples where that can become very, very costly. And one of my favorite ones that I was reading about today, getting ready for this one, was condo board regulations. So in this one place, everyone had to have carpet. Well, somebody rolled into someone's place and upstairs, they took out the carpet and they put in hardwood floors. Well, suddenly this lady had been there for a long time. It sounded like, she could hear the high heels and everything. And then they sold it upstairs and a dance school moved in. And it sounded like jackhammers were pounding on the floor above this person. And then there was legal action in terms of how this all went down, where this lady had to sue that guy. The judge came back and said the condo board should have enforced the bylaw to make sure there was carpet. It came back to the condo board meeting. So what happened in the meeting that they didn't issue, which is getting back to being connected to your strategy. So it all ties together. The issues that result from that meeting. That's where it's going to go down. Yeah. Blockbuster agendas. Sorry, I threw you off.
No, I'm interested in that, because agendas, are the key to a meeting, right?
Well, yeah, agendas are critical, obviously, in terms of, and so you've run meetings before, right?
Yes, I have.
How long do you spend on the agenda? Like if you're getting it ready for a meeting?
When I'm preparing, about 30 minutes.
You do. So I'm glad to hear that. Most people spend 0, really, typically, and but if I'm hearing 30 to 45 minutes, that means you've been thoughtful. It means that you're respectful of the people's time and you're going to roll in there. And here's the thing about agendas for me, and I'll just ask your viewers maybe for a second, and I don't know if they're interacting right now, or I can ask you, what's your favorite Hollywood film?
Oh, the Matrix series.
The Matrix, right? The blue pill and the red pill. I'm like Godfather era. When I'm in working with younger audiences, I don't know any of the movies they're doing, except my kids take me out to some of I get to see Thor and the Hulk and stuff. Anyway, here's the thing.
Thor.
I think every meeting that you go to should be as exciting as your favorite Hollywood film. And when I say that, every great Hollywood film has a great script, right? It has to have a great script to start, so every great meeting has to have a great agenda. And if you're the kind of guy that wants to be a good script writer, a good agenda writer, then you know they're going to get paid off in the end. And I'll give you another one of these acronyms, and I'm sorry, I'll just go to my whiteboard here, which I know is not there. We're going to take the word agenda, and I want to work you through that for some of the things. And I just want to show you this here. This is a workbook that I take into my workshops when I teach the workshop, and I just want to pop it open to the agenda thing here, and I'll give this to you.
For sure. Let's make it happen.
So the A in agenda for me is an attention grabber.
Okay.
If we show up in the meeting, what's the first thing that you cover in meetings that you're in typically?
Financials.
Financials. Hey, does that get everybody excited?
Oh, no.
Right? And so if we're getting together, why not just pick something simple? In a condo board meeting, it could be something as simple as, hey, we made a great decision on our gas bill, and guess what? We saved 50 grand. Yay! And just announce that as the first thing. The one that's killing a lot of meetings is, can we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes? And the energy is just gone out of things. So the A in agenda is for the attention grabber. The other thing that I'd like you to think about, and I'll try to throw this up on camera for you guys, is start to think about your agendas. Can you see here? And I'll show you, maybe I can show you here. You can see there, you see how I have blocks in there? It's not like a list. It's not like one thing and one thing and one thing. It's blocks. So I think I was mentioning earlier that on an agenda, I think there should be some ground rules. And we want to talk about cell phones, and we have a fight in a meeting. How are we going to deal with it? Well, in one of those blocks on the agenda, what I'm hoping is you put the word ground rules. Could be up in the right-hand corner. Maybe you put the vision statement up in another part of the agenda that's on the agenda. We know why we're there. I'll just refer to the ground rules for a second and say, if you're going to have a fight, the best suggestions that I can have besides going to therapy and doing everything you need to do is put simple things on the agenda. So one person speaks when there's a disagreement and make it about the issue and not about the person. But the reason to put it on the agenda is that we've all agreed on that. Those are our ground rules. That's not, don't put in the exact words I've said. Those are our ground rules. We know they're right there. So when a dispute comes up, we know exactly what's going to happen, and that one person speaks is really, really critical to doing that. So there's the attention. So I said the A in agenda was the attention grabber. So we got everybody's attention by announcing a great thing. Then we're on to the next one, and that is the, did I flip back here? Let me see if I can find it. We got the one more.
I need to follow this. I'm
Here we
writing
go.
stuff down.
The G in agenda is for what I'm going to call great goals. So if you're spending this 30 minutes to prepare the agenda, you can put the word financials, or you can actually wordsmith this a little bit so that people will actually read it. Because I don't want to read the word financials. I want to put, we're going to save another 50 grand. Find out how. Those are things that are going to grab, if you want people to read the agenda before the meeting or get excited. So make those goals great goals as you're going along. The E in agenda for me is to create excitement. Now, excitement can be brought in a couple different ways. One thing you can do is bring in a quote that's related to the meeting. One of my favorites is by Ben Franklin. Don't put off until tomorrow what you can get done today. If we've got that on the agenda, that's going to feed into the fact that we're working on follow-up as a team. And we can refer to that, and that creates a little bit of momentum and excitement. And so whatever way you kind of get excitement into the situation, right? Maybe you're announcing things you're doing to the building or whatever's happening. The next thing is the navigation tools. And the N, that's the N in agenda for me, so A-G-E-N. The navigation tools are these things like learning how to fight and what do we do when a fight comes up. So that could be in the ground rules or the navigation tools. And then the D in agenda, and this might be my favorite one, is I think you have to put the words decide now right beside every line item on the agenda. Because if you're getting together to make decisions, remind yourself that that's what you're there for. The thing that's killing meetings is let's table that to the next meeting. Let's put it off, right?
Well, unless we need some information to back up our decision, which is understandable, but I agree with you. Back in the day, we had things tabled for months on end.
Tabled for months on end.
It's might as well take it off because it's never going to get done. That, I agree with you. It's like, if you can make a decision on the spot, make a decision on the spot. Otherwise, there's certain, like you need a quote. So you have to have some supporting documentation information to make a decision. But I'm all in. I'm with you.
Well, and I love what you're saying about that, because the thing about what type of meeting are we having? Are we having an information meeting? Are we having a social meeting? Call it that. But don't make it a social meeting if it's supposed to be a meeting where you're getting things done, right? I know one guy, for example, is a senior leader. They make sure all the decision making happens. So if there's, say, a 2-hour meeting, what he does is he knows he doesn't need to be there for the whole time. So he calls the meeting leader in advance and he says, "Can you just put me in the first 10 minutes?" He's on the agenda, comes in, says his very important information, and then he's gone. It's a great use of his time in terms of how he's doing things, right? But so I think decide now is going to prompt you to say, is this something that we want to make a decision about? And we don't want to table things. We don't want to put things off, if it's possible. Yeah. So then the final one there is the accountability check-in, which is the A in agenda. And that is who needed to do something, what do they need to get done, and when did it get done? And it's right on the agenda. Now, the neat thing that I learned in one of the workshops I was doing is there's some people who have what's called a running agenda. So I don't know, do you use Google Docs yourself?
Not at our board, but I use it in my business.
It's something like Google Docs where you can have a document that everybody can edit, everybody can have input on. Take that agenda and imagine having an agenda that keeps the history of all the agendas in one document. Well, that's a great tool. In fact, it could be, I'm not sure, I won't say this for sure, but it might even be almost a legal reference for condo board meetings if you're keeping it all in one place. But that running agenda, then it's all going, we cascade down everything that's getting done, and we have a history for the organization. So that's the A in agenda. So again, you want to make sure you've got an attention grabber, you've got great goals, create excitement, have navigation tools, decide now, and then finally, went to these agendas, use them as an accountability check-in. And I think that's another great way to make agendas a little bit more robust. And the other thing I'll say about agendas, like Hollywood movies, is we know Hollywood movies are there because we see stuff on cereal boxes and on billboards, and there's a promotion. Well, one of the things I think you can do very simply is get your cell phone out and maybe work with the chair of the board. And if something exciting is going to happen at the meeting, shoot a little 1-minute promo and then send that out to everybody on the board. You want to get really excited about marketing the agenda? Here's something you can do. You take the agenda itself and you would have, you would print it. On the back, you write a personal note to each board member and then go crazy and put it in the mail. If it's an important enough board meeting and they get something in the mail with a specific directive on the back, that'll really get their attention. Now, you won't do that every meeting, but it's another great way. So think about, you've put the time into making the agenda, you need to market it as well and get people excited. And I'm not saying take a lot of time. I mean, do these quick techniques that allow you to do that.
Right. I have one quick question for you.
Yeah.
It's not entirely tied into the agenda item. However,
sure.
You mentioned that when people argue, they focus on the personal, not on the issue itself. And they take things personally, as if they're being affected. They are, but they don't focus on the issue itself. Can you give some advice on how to solve that?
So again, the first thing is put it on the agenda. So we all agree that when there's a fight, one person speaks, we're going to make it about the issue, not about the person. Now, as a facilitator, I'm able to focus that very, very quickly. For folks that have maybe less experience, if you want to be able to get back with a simple question of like, why are we here to meet? Right? So the fight's happening and maybe, I don't know, these things get very passionate. Why are we here? And if we have this reminder on the agenda and then we have this sort of agreement, we want to answer that question. And I'm not here to attack you or make comments about your jacket. That's not it. It's a nice jacket. Give me a break.
Thank you.
What I'm saying is what we're here to do is we're here to get things done. Because remember, we're back to our strategy, which is we want our property values to be better, and we agreed on those things. So if it gets down in that deep personal, if it gets to the point where someone's got to get out of the room, then you've got to do that stuff as well very intensely. But I hope the why is going to drive people mainly. Okay. Yeah.
I have another question. Which
Please.
Yeah, actually, it's a big issue to have personally, even though I shouldn't be taking it personally. Where boards meet. Certain boards meet in their condos, in the owner units. There's distractions, restaurants. There's alcohol involved, which is totally, I think, in my book, totally against something to do at a meeting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about meeting in the right space?
So I think where you meet is as important as what you're meeting about. So remember, I'm saying meeting. What are you meeting about? Are we meeting to socialize? Great. Have a social meeting, but don't mix in discussing the electrical bill or the foundation repairs when you're doing that. So I think you want to be really clear about why are we meeting. If it's sort of an innovation session, set up the room with whiteboards and stuff up on the walls and really start to get your ideas flowing. And that's an ideas meeting. If it's going to be the type of meeting where you're making decisions, right? We've got that great agenda. We're gonna roll through things very quickly. We're gonna set a limited amount of time. By the way, if you're ever having a condo board meeting and it's going too long, just get rid of the chairs. You kick all the chairs out of the room, and here's what happens, especially with the age condo board meeting, folks will get too tired. They last about 20, 25 minutes, and that's it. So kick the chairs out of the room. It's a great way to slow things down in terms of getting things done. And then you watch. That little story about their vacation in Hawaii is going to get a lot shorter. So I think that's one of the things you can do as well when you're moving things along.
I wrote that down. You know what? That's a great idea. It's a great piece of advice. Do you have any other resources that you can share with our audience?
So I think, so we're talking about this fight thing. So one of my favorite books is a book called Fierce Conversations. So if you Google that, Fierce Conversations, there's a woman named Susan Scott, great speaker, wonderful writer. And in this book, it gives you many techniques, because you're talking about going into depth about how to deal with sort of controversy. One of my favorite concepts in her book, Fierce Conversations, is she says that you should let the silence do the heavy lifting.
That is deep.
And one of those funny things as a facilitator is you want to practice that. Because sometimes it's better to say nothing. Hey, guess what? We just got hit with a $75,000 bill because the electrician left the window open, the pipes froze. That can get more done than all the blather that happens. I think that's a really, really good resource. And then another great resource, if you get a chance, please visit createawesomemeetings.com. There's a podcast there with 23 episodes, over 6,000 downloads. I'm meeting people from around the world through that podcast, really exciting. The book is there. There's some great blog articles. This is all free information. Like, jump on there, find resources that you need. There's concepts explained that we're talking about today. Just get the help you need to make your meeting better. I think that's another good resource for you.
I listen to those podcasts. They're fantastic. And I got the book from the site as well, which is a great resource. Like, I have this at my office, so anytime I need to, I have a question, I refer to this thing, and I only got it about a month or and a half ago. This is a book that every business owner, every board should have, so go to the website. We're going to also post a link under the video once the episode goes, once it's recorded and we post it. So invest in yourself, invest in your condo, get this, read it.
Well, and one of your colleagues was talking about reading it as well, and the concept of follow-up came up. Right. And I was so glad to hear her mention it, because it was one of those giddy things for me of like, I got the book and now I'm going to take action and do something. And I love this follow-up piece because I think it's so critical. So here you are, you know why you're meeting, you know your strategy, you've got a great facilitator because they've been working on their facilitator techniques, you've actually got a great agenda because they've spent the time, and then you've gotten into, you've prepped the space, and then the meeting ends. Well, what happens when the meeting ends, right? So you've run meetings. What do you do when the meeting ends?
We go our separate ways.
We go our separate ways.
And we try to follow the agenda, follow the tasks that we decide on at the meeting, in between meetings, but sometimes, usually it tends to happen during board meetings and at condo boards, people don't talk until the next meeting. They'll task the condo manager, the property manager with something to do, and they're hands off. And then they go to the next meeting, which is 4-6 weeks later, and they have a wonderful 3-hour-long meeting. And that's usually what happens. Well,
and that's the reality of many places. This is not just condo boards. I mean, this is the reality of what's going on. If I'm running a $2 million organization and I do meetings, we're going to be as good as what we do in that room. Basically, I think there's too much responsibility to not have a good follow-up scenario. I'm going to just jump in here, guys, and I'm going to show you. This is from the workbook as well. And you can find this kind of information on the Create Awesome Meetings website. The first thing in follow-up, and I'm going to use the word fast. Back to my big whiteboard here. Here we go. I put the F up here for fast. What I'm going to say is, what is the feedback loop that people use when they follow up? And when I say feedback loop, I'm really talking here about modality. So on a condo board these days, I'm guessing we've got maybe some older people and some younger people.
A little mix of both, yeah.
Older people like to talk in person. Yeah. Younger people like to get a text. What do we do after meetings usually? Mass email. The mass email is not getting used. It's not getting used corporately. It's not, just nowhere near. You type up all these notes. The meeting minute takers are sending out all these minutes. The materials are not getting used. Well, one of the things I challenge meeting facilitators to do, and they're going to say, no, it's going to take too much time, is actually deal with each person. If you're only talking about 8 or 10 people, find out the way that board member wants to be communicated to, and communicate them with them in that way. So if it means 3 steps or 4 as opposed to 1, but what's happening is when we do the 1 step with the mass email, we click, and then we get to the next meeting, like, did you read the stuff? And it's like, nope. So send the text to the young person. Have the one-on-one with the person who wants one-on-one. Give the phone call to the other guy. You will save time because they'll start to get more engaged. And if they're more engaged and let's say they've been tasked with, again, getting research around some of your utility bills, they'll go out and they're more likely to get that work done because they're being allowed to do that. It also gives another touch point for the meeting leader to be with them. So that's the feedback loop. The next one is the A in FAST, which is what I say is to astonish each other. So, hey guys, guess what? All the effort that we put into in this board meeting led to a $75,000 savings. And we want to get that information out clearly to everybody. So again, we're generating excitement in between things. Finally, we want the S in FAST to be standardize the follow-up process. And I heard you referring to this earlier. We were doing it a certain way. It wasn't very efficient. But now we did this and this and this. And all I'm suggesting to you is just write down the 5 or 6 differences that you made. And that's your condo board's standardized process. I don't mean a 20-page document. I don't mean that. What are the 5 things we did differently? Well, we threw out the chairs, and then we did, whatever, all those things. Get them down, and then the next guy that comes along to be the president or whatever doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. They've got a little standardized way to follow up and they know how to do things. And finally, you want to track progress. And I keep saying Google Docs because it's a common place for information. Maybe those bylaws go into the folder and this running agenda is there. But we want to be able to track progress so that anybody at any time can go in and look at that. And when I say Google Doc folder, it's a place sitting on a computer in the cloud, essentially, where everybody can get to it. And my goal for you guys and yourself would be to never email an agenda again. If it's on the cloud, then people have to learn to go get it. And if they can go get it, then they can go edit it. Then they can get engaged in it. And remember, we're writing better agendas now, so they're going to get engaged in the agenda. So that's sort of a hope that I have for people, because the one tired excuse that I hear is, I didn't get the email, or I didn't read it. And so they're arriving in the meeting and they're not ready. And here the facilitator's taking the time to get ready. So if you can create this other little step where people know where to go to get the information and they can all see it, that's one way to go. Yeah.
And one thing that people don't really consider, it's like you mentioned, you know, if somebody's the techie person, send them a text or make a phone call or meet in person. Most board directors, they say, oh, I don't have time to volunteer. However, if you track back and if you really think about it, if it takes you 30 seconds to send a text message and get a reply right away, instead of waiting until the meeting where you're going to have, let's say, 7 people at a table talking about the same issue, just think about the amount of time you're going to put in at that stage.
And you're educating, and they're having to learn it for the first time. And these are big issues. I mean, fix the foundation, pretty big issue. Major tenant dispute, these are major issues. So they don't have to, you don't have 3 months to wait. In your business, you wouldn't wait 3 months to deal with those things. And this is a business, so if you can really treat it in that way, I think it's a good idea.
And that's why our meetings are quite short, because we are pretty tech savvy. We have a younger demographic on our board. So we solve things right away via email. Then we have a meeting to vote on an item to approve it, and then we add it to the minutes, and off we go, right?
Well, and
but you have to be a little bit more active in between meetings.
I love what you're saying, because what I'm hearing is best practice.
Of course.
And one of the opportunities that condo boards have with each other is to actually learn from each other. And there's a concept I haven't talked about yet. It's called meeting mentorship. So in your own life, do you have a mentor in your own experience?
I do.
Yeah. What's that like, kind of one-on-one for you when you work with a mentor?
Oh, it's fantastic. They help me get through problems. They give me suggestions and tips and guidance, and they put me on a path that I would never consider myself.
Imagine if you had a meeting mentor and your meeting experienced the same thing that you just explained with the same level of excitement. What do I say when I mean meeting mentor? So this is someone who loves running meetings. They're really good at it. They produce great agendas. They create excitement. So what you're going to do, and this is, let's say there was another condo board that just heard about your condo board and you're doing some things right, and there's someone in your board that wants to volunteer as a meeting mentor. I'm not talking about a big exercise here. Here's the steps. What you do is, let's say you were the meeting mentor and I was the facilitator, and I'd come to you and I'd say, my meetings aren't running well. Would you please come and do 2 things for me? 1, can you come and attend a meeting? So your amount of time commitment would be you attend the meeting. You're going to observe me in the meeting, running the meeting. And then we'll go for coffee afterwards, and you'll say, Gord, you're good at this, you're not good at that, and I get to learn from you because you got to watch everything happen. The next meeting, and here's the magic, you'll run my meeting. So then I get to sit back to the side, and I get to watch you run the meeting. Here's the response that I get. When I get paid to be brought in as a professional facilitator, the neat thing that I hear from senior leaders is they're like, you know what happened is I got to sit back and I got to watch my team. This is a great gift for business owners, presidents, whatever, but for the condo lead, you get to sit back and watch the dynamics so you can learn. So now 2 things are happening. You're watching your team and you're watching a great facilitator. I get to learn from you about tips on what to do, and that's been 2 meetings worth. That's a very easy commitment. Well, imagine what would happen in the condo community if we knew that there were volunteers in the condo community who just love running meetings. And they had to do this very simple offer. How many more condo boards can we strengthen by having that simple process? And I'm not talking about, you can, if things are bad, you can pay people to come in. This isn't even paying. This is like volunteers, come on in, and what bottom line implication would that have going down the road? And the relief that comes from that for the people on the board is there's an option. Remember we were talking about this facilitators. Hey, I heard about this meeting mentor for condo boards. We're going to have him come on in. Oh, okay. Like you can't turn that down, and then you get this process going. And so I'm looking for, there's thousands of condo boards in northern Alberta alone. If we look in Canada and wherever, imagine if in each community we had this resource to reach out for each other. Yeah.
We gotta get it started.
It's pretty simple. Yeah.
Oh, definitely, it would help a lot of people, and reduce the amount of frustration, the amount of time people have to volunteer, and
and the other thing too is when I get brought in the room, one of the things I always say is I'm not in the family.
Yeah.
So I can't believe the stuff that comes out of my mouth. I keep thinking I'm going to get kicked out, but if you say it respectfully enough, again, back to my story earlier on, people, it's what they're thinking. So I say the things that need to be said. Remove people, keep people, train people, whatever those things are. And this is what these meeting mentors will be able to do. Concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think every condo board should hire a mentor or a meeting facilitator yourself, just to put them on the right path, just to give them some guidance so they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there. I always advocate first, and it's not that I don't want to get hired, it's just go to free first. So if you've got this volunteer pool to draw from, that's great. And then if you know your condo board could make more money and build the property value by bringing in somebody, then make that investment. And I actually have in the book, there's a whole sort of set, and I've done a blog article on this too, about things to look out for when you actually hire a professional facilitator. It's a laundry list, including do they have insurance and all this, like are they above board and are they good at it? Can they give you references? All those things, really, really important because condo board investments, pretty tight, right? Like it's got to count. Right. And I think this investment in meetings, as opposed to waiting to do it over 4 or 5 years, what would happen if you did it in 90 days and things were really cooking with gas, right?
And you could see some huge results right away,
Yeah.
which is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know what? I have a lot of notes. I'm out of questions.
I'm good. Let me just jump in there because I know when I do the workshop, I always like to sort of give a summary for people and give them a reminder of kind of what we covered, and I kind of hit the 10th step. So I think what I was remembering was is the first step is to take responsibility for yourself. I think that's really, really important, and we want to really be able to choose how we act during a meeting. The second thing is to really be aware of your team, build trust, build rapport, and get the right people in the room. Really, really important. The third step, again, this is back to my whiteboard, my thing right here, is to know your total meeting cost, right? Because meetings cost money. We want to save money, basically. The fourth thing is to get a great facilitator. Fire a bad facilitator. I don't say fire. Train them, get them some help, or fire them, or rotate the chair. The fifth one is connect your meetings to your strategy. The sixth, build a blockbuster agenda, because I think that every meeting should be as exciting as the Matrix.
Or as the Godfather.
Or as the Godfather, right? And then the seventh one is meet in the right space, right? So make where you meet as important as what you're meeting about. The eighth step is to get great resources. Follow up fast is the ninth step. And then I love getting to this part because it's sort of the 10th step and the final kind of ribbon that I put on the whole thing. And it really speaks to accountability. I've worked for 25 years in a variety of settings. I've owned my own business. I've been in union. I've been out of union. I've been in management, these things. Accountability really comes down to you're either going to be into it or not. There's no amount of money that's going to make you accountable or whatever. So how do we create accountability? Well, I think when we talk about taking action and creating accountability, I really like to talk about what inspires you. So I'll just ask this question for you. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll start first. So one of the guys that really inspires me is Terry Fox. Are you familiar with the Terry Fox story?
Oh, of course.
I hope the folks out here really know who Terry Fox is, but I always explain it just in case. 1980, this young man loses a leg to cancer, right? He sets out to run a marathon a day and run across Canada to make people aware about this cancer research need that he felt was very, very important. Well, he ran 143 marathons, and when I think about him, he got halfway across Canada, and I'll say this, another bucket list thing for your audience or maybe for yourself. On the North Superior Shore in Ontario, there's a monument to Terry Fox. And I think it's one of those places you just got to go and experience remembering how important it was what he does. Why am I inspired by him? Since he did that run in 1980, more than $700 million has been raised for cancer research.
Wow.
Remarkable. That's a bigger than life inspiration.
That's truly amazing.
Now I'm going to drill this back down and say, wait a second, there's actually people in meetings that could be your inspiration. So I'll talk about my corporate experience for a second. There was a woman in meetings, I would see her now and again, very nice lady, quiet, administrator. And I didn't know much about her, and I spoke with her at a Christmas party one year, and I found out that she took most of her modest salary, sent it back to another country, she built a home for her parents, and she sent many of her cousins through post-secondary education.
Wow.
She's in my meetings. I never thought to ask her for years about her story. I didn't know. She inspires me to this day. The challenge that I have for condo boards, anybody meeting, is here we are hung up on cell phones and all this dumb stuff. And yet underneath, all of us have inspiration like this. I'm not sure if you've got an inspirational story. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Is there anybody sort of that resonates for you?
You know what? I have a few people.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think we're going to leave it with Terry Fox because honestly, like that's such an inspirational story, and like I think every Canadian knows the Terry Fox story.
Knows the Terry Fox. So I'll leave it there. But what I would say for your condo boards is when you're with each other, there's no reason not to spend a few minutes one-on-one with the whole group saying, wait a second, let's just clear all this out for a second. What inspired? Why are you here?
Yeah.
What's the driving goal? And this then back to like, why are we fighting? Maybe it'll clear up. Maybe you'll find some empathy for the guy that you thought you were having a fight with. And these motivations. So we get inspired by people that are right beside us, the bigger than life people. Where's your inspiration? Bring that. When the meeting's going wrong, remember that. Hang on to that. Or be on your best behavior because that's the thing that you need to do. And I get really excited about it because I think that's what we need more of in our meetings because we're meeting for good reasons. So yeah.
And at times we're sitting next to somebody at a table and we don't know their story.
We don't know their story.
And you know what? That could be the biggest breakthrough you can ever come to at a meeting if you actually understand why people are there.
Suddenly the fight.
What are their goals? Why are they volunteering their time? Because at most board meetings are not getting paid. There are certain boards that have decided that there's going to be compensation for the time they put in, but a majority of boards, they're volunteers, and the volunteers have the most amazing stories if we truly dig deep.
So that's all in your meeting. That's all there,
Yeah.
and it's in every meeting that you're in. These, not all the time, but, a lot of that is there. So that's something I think is the last moment I always love to go out on when I'm explaining these things, because it's just it puts a whole bow on it, and it'll keep you engaged at a high level. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know what, Gord? I think we're going to take a short little break, but before we go, we're going to do a draw for a free copy of your book. So for those viewers who are actually listening, how many steps did Gord cover during this interview and in his book? So the first person that answers in our chat will get a free copy of his book. And after this, after the short little commercial, we're going to do some Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to add them in the chat as well, and we'll be happy to answer them. So stay tuned.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Condo Web Show. Our goal is to share this information with as many condo boards, owners, and managers as possible. We would be forever grateful if you could share this episode with your friends and colleagues by simply clicking one or all of the social share buttons on this episode page. Even better, if you know someone that would benefit from this information, please send them a link to this episode. If you have any questions or any ideas for an episode, please submit it by clicking on the Submit an Episode link on the main menu. We will do our best to get an industry professional on the show to answer your questions. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to the show on our website by submitting your name and email, or if you're watching on YouTube, by clicking the subscribe button. This way, you'll be reminded of upcoming episodes, and if you miss an episode, we will be happy to send you the recordings. Thank you for joining us on the episode, and now onto the Q&A with our guest.
Welcome back. So we had 3 entries. Guest 1616, I wish we knew your name. It's like the Anonymous. The Anonymous wins a book. Diane and Lyogi, great to see you, Lyogi. So we're going to do a draw. We're going to contact the winner. We're not going to do it on the show. Guest 1616, if you could send us your email or your name, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, we have no way of knowing who you are. So let's get to the questions. Let me just scroll through the chat feed. Do we have any questions coming in? All right, so question number 1. What is the biggest problem with condominium board meetings and how can it be solved?
So I think we've covered a lot of ground here in terms of the biggest problem, but if they can keep in mind that this is a real business with real implications and it requires a business approach by everybody that's involved, I think that's the kind of thing that's going to keep those meetings on track. And the way to do that is to create a really simple set of strategic objectives and the vision that will allow each meeting, you know exactly why you're there. If you're there to have fun, great. Buy a big bottle of champagne, I'll come join you. But if you're there to get things done, know that it's that type of thing. So be very, very clear about why you're there.
And enjoy the bottle of champagne after the meeting.
Enjoy it at the meeting where champagne is appropriate. No, like it's not. I wouldn't be mixing the two things up, I don't think.
Alrighty, question number 2. Should everyone on a condo board have an opinion about everything?
I think I said this earlier. The condo boards are made up of a lot of good meaning, you know, well-meaning people, and hopefully you've got some experts on there. But if you've got an expert in insurance, or someone's gone out to do all that research and they're coming in and they have the answer, if you have to spend the time to educate 10 people about everything that they learned, you're going to slow down and you can't actually get to all the issues that you need to deal with. So I'm going to guess that certain people need to know when they don't need to be exactly involved in knowing all the details about everything, and you're developing trust in your team that each person is, again, using their unique ability to do the things that they're good at, and that strengthens the whole team so you don't sort of drag down. There's too many issues to cover in a meeting, right? And if you think about it in a given year, like what's the laundry list? It's pretty long.
Yeah.
So if you're spending too much time on one issue, it's going to slow you down.
Fantastic. Next question. What are the implications if a condo board meeting is not well run? Which we touched.
Right?
Yeah.
Money, time, money, my property value. And again, I think we get back to this. I touched on the last step, which is the motivation. So here's the phrase that I have for the inspiration. If you can't be accountable to anything, be accountable to your inspiration. Maybe that'll be the thing that gets you going. So it'll get you away from the petty behavior and really into being, you know, that's very significant. So hopefully it's the dollars and those business things that are driving you. But in the end, if you got to get right down to it, just dig deep and find that reason that you're going to get engaged in the meeting so you can do well for you and everybody that's involved. Yeah.
Okay. Why is it so important to set up ground rules at the beginning of a condo board meeting?
Ground rules set the tone, right? We're going to be able to know exactly, you know, what we've chosen to do and what our ground rules are. And again, I think they're very simple. I think ground rules, you've got maybe 2, 3 that are important, maybe 5. And if you get past 5, you're starting to create a textbook, and you don't need that. We don't need to remember that. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. What is the value of our condo board meeting, and why is it so important to measure the cost?
I think so we talked about the cost earlier, but this is this idea of, you know, our time is valuable. So we're talking at least $1,000 an hour. Condo board meetings could be $2,000, $3,000 an hour. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but the idea of opportunity cost, right? You could be at the condo board meeting, or you could be somewhere else. You could be with your kids, your grandkids, you could be at work, whatever those things are. So it's very, very precious and very, very important to measure the cost so that it really keeps us all on track, because we don't want to waste time when we're in those meetings. But the other thing that we touched on is decision-making in condo board meetings is so critical because it's related to these dollars. So you know that one slow meeting where you don't get enough decided could have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars of implication. And I think that's why it's so critical.
Okay. Question. What would be a maximum time for a successful meeting?
I think the time's going to vary. But if I'm hearing that you're only getting together, so let's back it up. If we're running $2 million worth of business, how many man hours do we need to put into running $2 million worth of business?
Depends on the business.
Depends on the business, right? So can we get away with doing this meeting 9 or 10 times a year? And if that's not enough time, it's not enough time. So you have to meet more often. And I didn't touch on this, but the idea being if we can't all get together physically, these days with Skype or Zoom or these types of things, there's no reason why the subcommittees or whatever you have on these boards can't be getting together remotely, and not for a long period of time, 30 minutes at a time, this kind of thing. So I think you need to figure out how many hours do we need to put in to run this place, and then that's how many meetings that you need and how long the meetings need to be. So we start there with the business case, as opposed to saying, well, we meet for 3 hours, that's enough. We don't know. Make sure you know.
Malcolm, you had a question in regards to tasks. Yes, you can definitely use those. And we have 2 more questions here. No, 1 more. What can you do about a bad meeting facilitator?
Yeah, so again, the bad meeting facilitator, we're going to bring in quick relief. Like we want to so the concept of rotating the chair, or getting them some training, or bringing in a meeting mentor, somebody that they're going to trust, right? So they can learn from very quickly. Again, we can't afford a bad meeting facilitator for more than 1 or 2 meetings. It's just, the time is too precious. There's too much on the line, so we don't need to put up with it. And these terms that are in our bylaws, he's the president for another year or another 2 years or whatever that is. If that's just disastrous leadership that leads to bad financial outcomes, you've got to get bold and you've got to get in there and just be realistic from a business perspective. Yeah.
So I think that is it from our chat window. I have a personal question.
Yeah.
How would you go about recruiting the best board directors?
So what slows us down from recruitment? Like, oh, there's a warm body that showed up at the election. You're in. I mean, this is typical, right, in terms of what often happens. What are the implications of a bad board member? Poor decision making, fights, all that dysfunction. You lose more time in the meetings by not spending the time recruiting and doing the onboarding. So in fact, you have to designate how much time is it going to take us to recruit. So the active recruiting is a really critical role. It often falls to somebody. Do you know anybody? Do you think you know anybody that could, hey, what if they just came on, oh, it doesn't, where are they from? It doesn't matter. No, you actually need a criteria. So let's get back to setting a simple criteria for what a good board member looks like. If you're lucky, you've got a balance. Someone's like a numbers guy, and he knows that sort of area. Someone else maybe has run a company before or been in a leadership role, and they can sort of, be a good facilitator, and they've got those skills. So you're always, I think, in your condo, you want to know who's who in the zoo, essentially, and then you're recruiting, you're sort of continually recruiting. Like it never stops, because you want to know who's bringing in those good skill sets, including the soft skill sets. Like, I don't mean to dismiss those. They're very, very important for, again, maybe there's that person who's like the person in the meeting who can even things out. And they're really good on the team because then the hothead guy and the numbers guy doesn't say much, and you're balancing out those things. So I think recruiting kind of never stops. And hopefully what you do is you get to a point where some boards that I know are oversubscribed. Oversubscription means there's people dying to get on the board because they know they're going to make a big impact. Yeah.
That's a great answer. And then one thing, I deal with condos in the United States as well, and in many states, board directors actually go through an election. So they send out letters to other owners, to the board, what their strengths are, what their goals are, how they want to help and volunteer, which is something that is lacking a little bit on our side of the border.
This thing, it's the basic thing of like, I don't have time. Oh wait, I just got a bill for $15,000. I'm mad.
Yeah.
Right? So where do you want to pay your pain? Do you want to pay later? Or do you want to pay now? And that time that you do need, it actually is really, really critical. So hopefully folks can sort of find the time. This is back to this, like that facilitator who has to communicate to each person, because it actually saves time. So don't get caught in that trap of like, I don't have time. There's too much, it's too important. The issues move too quickly. We didn't even talk, if you're actually making a strategic plan, we didn't talk about environmental implications. Something that just came up, I think, in Alberta from a human rights perspective. Maybe you're aware of this. Yeah. What's the story?
Age.
Guess what? So the folks that thought they were going to be in a certain type of condominium where there's an age restriction and 55, whatever these things are, well, that changed. Well, that's a big upset. Well, the board's got to deal with that. And the transition won't come for a long time for certain things, but those are just environmental factors that they're coming down the pipe, and there's lots of issues. So there's too much to do to get hung up on having a bad meeting. The bad meeting is the easy thing to deal with. Really getting that good research, good leadership, really, really important.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it for questions. I think the timing is good.
Great.
So Gord, I would like to truly thank you for coming on our show and discussing and helping people and giving people advice how they can run awesome meetings.
I really appreciate being here. I hope folks here got something. My whole goal is, again, pick up 1 tip, 2 tips, go execute it in your next meeting, make it way, way better, and send some feedback to Rafal and let him know that this made an impact, because that's my whole thing, is getting in here, you hear it for the first time, and you want to go take action, do something, and make your condo board meetings absolutely fantastic. I think that's great.
Awesome. Thank you everybody for joining us. We wish you a great evening. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.